Want to welcome, our viewers who are going to be watching this to another week that we have here where Marshall and I are co-hosting this series. And I think it's really special, the conversations we've been having over the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed Marshall, and he and I talked about our purpose and why we're here. And, the conversation is also spills over into people's different experiences with drugs or their experiences with family members that have been on drugs. And, why do some people, know their purpose and stay the course, where other people, they just get sidetracked and they get caught up in drugs or get caught up in other distractions. And Marshall and I had a great discussion. He knew at 6 years old what his purpose was and what he wanted to do, and that he wanted to be in the NFL. And I was different. I got sidetracked on drugs as a young age, and I found my purpose later in life. So we're here with Willie Gault, who's a incredible athlete, Super Bowl champion, played with the Bears, played with the Raiders, also an Olympic athlete. So Willie, thanks for coming here, man. And we'd love to pick your brain a little bit about, when it is that you knew what your purpose was and, what you were going to do in your life.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. And Marshall and I have a special bond. We actually had surgery together. We were laying on the bed next to each other. And as I woke up in a dizzy, phase, and I said, "Where is Marshall?" And my wife at the time said, "Who is Marshall?" And I go, "Marshall, fuck, he's over there." And she goes, Are you dreaming? I go, "No, I know Marshall was here." And so I had to prove to her that Marshall was there. So Marshall was there. But I think, for me, it's always an evolution, because I think, I'm not sure if I ever will know what my total purpose is. I think, I was very fortunate. I had a great childhood, had a great mother and father who loved me, taught me right from wrong, let me make decisions early in my life. And I had great coaches and teachers, and also I had great friends and also enemies, because I think your competitors also feel the fire in you that's called you as an athlete or a person. So those doubters that said you wouldn't do anything, that also fueled you. So I was very fortunate to have that in my life and growing up. And I always wanted to achieve different things. I knew I had athletic ability. I knew I was fast. So I wanted to see where that could take me. I love the Olympics. I watched that and go, wow, I would love to do that. And so I had an opportunity to do that. I always promised myself that I would never not try anything that I wanted to try and leave myself where when I'm 60, 70, or 80 going, boy, I wish I tried that. And so that's basically the way my life is. I try a lot of different things. Now I know my limitations. I won't go out and jump off a building and see if I can fly. I know I can fly. So I know my limitations, but that being said, I don't want to limit myself as far as things I can do and things I can control.
That's great. What were were there any distractions for you growing up that kind of sidetracked you from your purpose at all, that, you just, sometimes sidetracked you or knocked you off it?
Oh, there's always attraction and destruction. And I mean, just so much. I mean, it's so much that it's hard not to realize it, but also not to adhere to it. But I think for me, when I think back at it, I was always a leader without being a leader. I never followed the crowd, and one time I remember I had a car and I sat in the back for some reason. I let my friend drive, and they all lit up a joint, which was a marijuana joint at the time, which I didn't really know much about it. And so I proceeded to roll down the window and I go, that's not what I do. And they started laughing and picking at me. And I laughed at myself and I go, you're right, I'm country, I don't care. But I didn't like it, but I didn't really care about being made fun of, because I knew it wouldn't be a part of me being who I wanted to be. And I knew I didn't want to do drugs and everything else. So I just said, no, I'm not gonna do that. And consequently, that happened throughout my life. And I just said no. And to this day, I've never drank, never smoked, never done drugs in my life. And it's because I didn't really care about being made fun of, because I make fun of myself, because it's just part of life. I try to find the humor in everything I do.
Willie, what's that like? Because I think, as we had these conversations, a lot of people, they're not comfortable with being the outcast. Everybody wants to fit in today's world.
Right.
Having original thoughts and being authentic, it's like not even heard of.
Right.
When you're the one guy who, it's like there's 10 people doing something and you're the one guy not, it's like that's unheard of today. Right. You just jump on board.
Yeah.
But back in the day for us, it was cool.
Yeah. It was cool. It's in the beginning, I think it was more of a joke. Then as I realized being an athlete, I go, wait a minute, I can do this. As I became the fastest guy in my school, I go, wow, I can do this. Then it became a higher power, so to speak. And it became more of a thought process where it goes, okay, there's a road, there's a window. And I was always told there's a window that opens and closes. When it's open, you better jump through, because when it closes, sometimes it never opens again. So I was very conscientious of that window. And I paid attention. I was a student of the game from a standpoint. I watched players. I watched what players did off the field. I watched the news. I read paper as far as what athletes did, the mistakes they made. And I think one thing that really meant a lot to me and changed my life forever was the fact that I read that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who at the time was making $1 million a year. In my day, $1 million a year was like, oh my gosh, it was like $30 million now. He filed for bankruptcy. And so I said to myself, if Kareem could file for bankruptcy, that means anybody could. So I have to really make sure I'm on my game. So at that point, it became like, I don't care what people think. This is what I have to do for me to make sure that I do what I have to do. And so I didn't really care about being odd. And, I go to parties and people offer me a drink. I go, no, I'll have, water, or I'll go. They go, why, you have a problem? I go, no, I just have never drank in my life. It's not a part of what I do, because as an athlete, I thought it would help me. Because on the track field, I wanted to be the fastest. And then I started eating right, because I stopped eating meat. So I learned that I did the research that meat sits in your system sometimes 6 months. So as a sprinter, I go, wow, if meat's in my system for 6 months, it's sitting in my intestines, it's going to make me heavier than I want to be to run. So that may take off the 100th of a second or a 10th of a second, whatever. So I thought about it in a conscious effort to be able to think about, okay, how is it going to affect me in now and in the future? And that's how I made the decision. And then Marshall, when I got older, I just didn't care. I mean, I was like, no, this is who I am. If you take me or leave me. Right. But that's when you become older. So that's how I deal with it.
Fascinating. Willie, what drove you? Like, what was your main drive when you were playing sports, and still to this day?
Man, you know what? I just had great parents, great competition, great people. In my high school, we had 3 or 4 guys and 2 of those guys were faster than I was, or just as fast, and we were fast. And so it fueled my fire to be faster or to be the best. And so I think I just had great leadership, and it comes, either you have a competitive nature in you or you don't have it. And some people do and some people don't. I really had it. I wanted to compete. No matter what I did, I ran. I was like Forrest Gump. I was always running. I'd run to the mailbox. I'd run to the store. And we live in the countryside, so I had to run to the bus stop. The bus stop was probably 400 yards from my house. I'd run to the bus stop, run home. So I loved running. So I had a genuine love for it. And so I just think it was a God-given ability and talent. And also my parents who nourished that and also let me make decisions early in my life. They go, look, this is your decision to make, because if you make the wrong decision, you blame yourself. You can't blame me if I make the decision for you. So I'm going to give you the tools to make the decision, but I want you to make the decision yourself. Therefore, you blame yourself. You can't blame anyone else. In this day and time, everybody wants to blame everybody else for everything. Look at yourself and blame yourself for what you're doing, because you can control your actions, your emotions, your emotion, and how you treat people. If someone else treats you bad, it doesn't mean you have to treat them bad. So you're in control of that. We can only control certain things. And, as a wide receiver, I can only control certain things. Marshall Faulk, as a great running back, he can only control certain things. He can't control the coach calling the play. He can't control the line blocking. He can't control the quarterback, how he gets it to him. But once he gets the ball, he can somewhat control what he does and how he acts to it. The same way as a receiver, I can control many things, but I can be on time, know my plays, don't make mistakes, and be prepared when the opportunity comes. And that's how you do it.
I love it. Marshall, how about you, man? What drove you?
Having 5 older brothers.
Yeah, that would do it.
Just competing against them, literally, wanting to keep up. Mm-hmm. All of my brothers are 2 years apart, and then I'm 5 years removed. So I had to grow up fast. I had to learn things quick. If It was like I had to be stuck with mom if I wanted to have fun with them. Like it literally drove me. I played with older kids.
Right.
All of my friends were their friends. So initially that was the drive. But once I got older, you know, I just everything that I ever did in the beginning, it was about like beating other people. And then once you realize that you're the standard, then it's about beating yourself. Like, how much better can I get? How much better can I do it? Like, you start pushing yourself. Those are the kind of things that you learn to do. Because if you don't, you know, you become stagnant, and others start to chase you down in life, regardless of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You got to keep pushing the envelope at whatever it is you're doing.
That's awesome. And Willie, I mean, you were a Super Bowl champ. How does that experience change you, or what do you take from an experience like that stays with you for life?
Well, it's an unforgettable moment in my life and in history that I'll always take with me. It was my 12-year NFL career was the most amazing things I've ever experienced in my life. One of course. And I relish it. I have nothing but positive and great thoughts about it. Winning the Super Bowl was so surreal, because when I looked at the Super Bowl as a little kid, you saw the Cowboys and Drew Pearson and Lynn Swann at the Pittsburgh, and I love those guys, and Tony Dorsett and Walter Payton and Jim Brown. I looked up to those guys. I saw them win the Super Bowl or be in the Super Bowl. I thought, wow, that would be great. And you always thought about, okay, I'm running down the field, I'm going to catch the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, yay! But to be in the Super Bowl was sort of surreal. And I can remember, the thing I remember the most, which is a lot, was running on the field and when they introduced me and not being able to really feel my feet hit the ground. I mean, it was like, there's so much nervous energy that it's hard to explain. And then we got the first kickoff, and I was returning kickoffs at the time. And all I could think of was just catch the ball, look the ball all the way in my hand, don't drop the ball. So when I caught the ball, then it was just a game. Once the first play was over, it became just a game until halftime when we had a huge lead. And then we thought, oh my gosh, we're going to win the Super Bowl. This is great. But it was amazing.
That's awesome. How about for you, Marshall? What was that like for you?
Let's bring Tommy in, man. Tommy.
Oh yeah, cool. I know he's here.
Let's bring Tommy in. Let's get some of this entertainment life in here.
Tommy, my guy.
Yeah, love this dude, man.
Tommy.
How y'all doing, man?
Good, brother. How are you, T?
Glad to have you on.
Good. Really good. Really good. You know, the subject matter for me, and you know, I ended up being a comedian, but just really quickly. I just really quickly. I always, and that's all of us. We all wanted to be athletes, you know. And, you know, I was telling Thornton Chandler, who's a tight end friend of mine, he played for Dallas, and I told him if I only had the size, you know, because by the time I'm the same size as I was when I was 15, okay? Because when JV started, everybody got big. They went away from the summer and started lifting weights, and size matters, okay? But for me, it was all about heart. It is all about watching, observing. And that's been my successes, observation. You know, when I was, you know, I didn't know anything about myself growing up. You know, I knew that my family was white, and I knew that I was black. I didn't know what black and white were, you know. I moved to Washington, D.C. The black kids kick our ass, and they were calling my sister White Cracker and my brother White Cracker, and they were calling me White Cracker Lover. So I go to my mother and I say, what's a white cracker? I go to my mother and I say, why are they calling me a white cracker lover? I like graham crackers. Because that's how naive I was, you know? That's how naive I was, you know? And so, you know, she says, that's what people call people your color, you know, when they don't like them. And people who are your color, when they don't like us, you know, they call us names too. And so I was always mixed up and kind of in between, you know what I mean? And so I was always trying to fit in. But one of the things that made it equal playing field was I found out I had talent. I found out I can sing. I found out I can dance. I found out I could do any impression. I didn't know they were even called impressions. You know, finally, when I was like 30-something, a guy in an interview asked me, hey, how did you get to do impressions? I was like, what's an impression? You know what I mean? Because it all kind of came naturally,
Right.
you know? And one of the things, I ran into one of my boxing coaches because I couldn't compete in football because everybody got bigger, you know, and I love defense. So, you know, I ain't gonna play D. I busted my ankle showing off in front of the JV. I was in JV basketball finally, and I broke my ankle trying to show off that I could dunk. And so that was gone. So I started boxing, and I boxed for years and years. And I just ran into my boxing coach. And I won the USABF twice, Golden Gloves. I traveled the country, could have went to the Olympics. I just ran into one of my boxing coaches the other night when I was doing a book tour, you know? And he said, man, I'm so glad that he became a comedian because he won all the time, but he wanted a joke. Okay, we've come from the fights. He's the only one who got a trophy. He's laughing the whole way. He wouldn't apply himself in training, but if he did, he would have been a champion. So I always used to say about him, hey, man, you need to be a fucking comedian, you know? And he said, I'm so glad that he became that. But here it is. When he left my training, I went back around the old neighborhood. And see, that's where it lies. It's the discipline. It's the discipline that I lacked and I never had, you know? And when he left, I stopped going to the gym as much. I started trying to hang out with my friends who smoked weed, you know, and naturally I lost the Hudson Valley Finals, which lead to the Nationals, you know? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So naturally I got into comedy just out of events, but I knew it wasn't just going to be talent. I knew it wasn't going to just be talent. I saw how the lack of discipline in boxing affected me. I had another chance. I came out to LA. A friend of mine asked me to try comedy years ago. I wasn't even thinking about it. He took me to the worst strip club in DC. He said, get on stage. I said, what am I supposed to do? He said, I don't know. Just say something. From the first time I said something, people laughed. From there, it was talent shows. I started opening up for big acts like Luther Vandross and Patti LaBelle. Ended up in Hollywood. Ended up here, taking the bus, working at Jerry's Deli, delivering mail. But I'd be in those comedy clubs every single night, 7 nights a week, because I couldn't just be funny. I had to have the technique down. Mm-hmm. And I watch. See, the one thing I do is I watch, especially athletes. I watch them. I don't miss anything. It's my observation skills that's got me where I am. You know, I watched and I listened to what people say. Plexico Burress, when they won the Super Bowl, they came to him. They said, hey, look, you won the Super Bowl last year. You were in prison for shooting yourself in the foot. He said, hey, I just asked God this morning, if you just get me to the field, I'll be thankful for just that. I listened to Ray Lewis at the end of his Super Bowl MVP. You won the MVP. You were up for murder. What happened? He said, I know that God wouldn't have put me through a trial unless there was a triumph behind it. And so I use athletes as a barometer, because it doesn't matter what team they go to. It doesn't matter whether they played at a small college. You know, it doesn't matter. What matters is when they get to the next level that they adjust to it. And that's where I got it from. So eventually, you know, that led to television, to film, and to all the things that I'm doing. But it's all interconnected.
That's great, man. Hey, Tommy, it's nice to meet you. My name's Ted. I'm hosting this series with Marshall. So pleasure to meet you, buddy.
You too, brother.
Yeah. So question, I guess, for three of you. Tommy, I resonate with what you're saying. I do a one-man play on my life story, so I love hearing what you're talking about. And I have a question just for all of you, because you were athletes. And, you know, I didn't play athletes at the level that you guys did, or athletics. I played college athletics. But I have a question. So when you're playing athletics, you know, there's an experience where, like, you know, Marshall and Willie, you've got the attention of, you know, 60,000 people in the stands watching. You've got the attention of people watching at home. You have this when you're up on stage, in terms of doing your comedy. And so, you know, when I look at successful people, they're able to grab attention, you know, whether they're one-on-one in a meeting, they can hold somebody's attention and that creates success. If they're on stage and they can hold somebody's attention, that creates success. So how did you, after the NFL, for you guys, where you had all this attention and had all this energy coming in, how did you reinvent yourselves to start creating a new life, where you could draw attention in again, whether it was a business or a cause, to ultimately help people?
Who's first? Marshall.
Well, I'll go. For me, it was, you know, I literally, when you play sports and you literally, you walk on the field and people just cheer, you're like, that was easy. You know, you score a touchdown, or you do the little things you do, people cheer. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start working in television and you don't know if what you do, you don't know how people interact. When you perform in front of people, you get immediate response.
Yeah.
When you're working in TV, you're working in front of a camera without an audience, and you don't know if it's good, if it's bad. The only thing you know is you're doing your job. And so there's just a repetition and working at it and a skill set that you have to develop. And literally, I knew what made me good at sports. It was my work ethic. I studied myself. I studied my craft. And I just took that into television. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this into television. I studied my butt off. I watched James Brown. You know, I watched Herb Cross. I watched all the guys, John Madden. I watched him do TV. And I was like, okay, all right. I watched the transitions. I watched how they got in after the host talk. I watched how they did everything. And so I was like, okay, I developed my style of broadcasting and how I wanted to be. And I added my little innuendos, the thing that makes Marshall Faulk. And I was like, I created my brand of how I wanted to convey my message of football that was different than everybody else, but nothing's original. Everything about football has been said, has been done. I didn't recreate anything, but when I speak about football, some of the things that I say, they're original to me, you know, and that's what you have to do. And that's how you have to apply it. That's how you have to rebrand yourself. You can't just, I couldn't sit up on TV and be like, I'm Marshall Faulk. I could just be me. No, I had to recreate myself and prove to people that I could do television.
That's pretty awesome. How about for you, Willie or Tommy?
Yeah, for me, I think there's a transition, because when you think about it, you play a game that you start playing in junior high or whatever. You play it through college, and then, you know, for me, it was 12 years of pros that you love. And so to think about giving that up is a transition from a mental standpoint. But what I did is I tried to promise myself always one day that I would never stay too long, because people can stay too long and it's not good. So when I retired, the one thing I wanted to do was do something that I love doing. You have to be passionate about what you're doing, whether you're playing sports or whatever. You got to be passionate about it, because if you're passionate about it, you're going to work at it. If you're not passionate about it, then it becomes a job. And then a lot of people have jobs they hate. So you got to find something you're passionate about. So when I first retired, I went into acting. I was on a TV series for 3 years and a couple of recurring roles, and I loved it because I was passionate about it, because I love everything about acting. And I studied, I went to classes for 5, 6 years, acting classes. So I wanted to hone into my craft, like Marshall said. You have to do the same things you did to get there. Like in football, I stayed extra after practice. I worked hard. I learned my plays. Same thing in acting. You got to go, you got to study, you got to look at people who did it and figure out how you figure out to be you. But then after that, you try to reinvent yourself by, business stuff, because I was in business. I majored in marketing, so I wanted to figure out that. So you reinvent yourself. So what you do is have to find something that you're passionate about. And what you first go into, that may not be what you wind up in, but at least you're passionate about it. And if you're passionate about it, you can help yourself and then help others through that passion.
Love it, man. And how about for you, Tommy? What are moments where you felt like you had to reinvent yourself, where you were like, wow, this is the next challenge, and for me to go to the next level, this is a little bit maybe scary or a little bit challenging, but I got to reinvent myself?
Well, it was studying my craft. Studying my craft. Like I said, I'm naturally funny. And I didn't know it, because I'd be at a family gathering and I say something, everybody started laughing. And I'd be like, everybody thinks I'm stupid. I was a little kid, And finally I asked my mother, why does everybody laugh when I say something? And she said something I'll never forget. She said, Tommy, they're not laughing at you. She said, you have a way of putting things that makes people happy so fast that their first reaction has to be laughter. And so I was able to concede that and know that, okay, I'm funny. But now, how do I take that to the next level? When I got to Hollywood and I went to the Comedy Store, and when I got to the Comedy Store, and see, I relate everything to athletics, When I got to the Comedy Store, it was like me leaving a small school, okay, and going to like the Cowboys or something. I mean, when I went into that Comedy Store, it was Seinfeld before he got his show, Roseanne before he got her show. Before she got, I said he, huh? Roseanne before she got her show. Okay, it was Ellen before her show. It was Martin before he got his show. It was Jim Carrey when he was nowhere near TV. It was Damon when Damon Wayans when he first started. It was Eddie Murphy. I was going and seeing those guys perform over and over, and I was in the little room. And I was peeling my name out of a hat, and I was naturally funny. But what I did was I had to do a lot of watching. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have to figure out how to compete on this next level. Okay. Now I observed a quote from Bruce Lee that I saw in a interview that he did in 1968. They asked him, how did you become a great martial artist? And he said, I practiced so hard that my reaction to actual fighting is at the speed of a reflex. He said, but it's not a reflex because reflexes are natural. So what I experience in martial arts is a natural naturalness on unnatural naturalness. And so I started applying that to my comedy. I took a little bit of what everybody was doing and incorporated it into my own style. Now you talked about, when there's a big crowd and we love that and how that gets us fired up. Well, knowing what you're doing, it goes past, if there's a certain focus that comes out of that it translates to me from acting to comedy to athletics. I'll give you an example. I'll use Willie. I watch a lot of football, boy. There was a certain, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was later on in postseason with Chicago, and they were going into the final rounds. Okay, it was a broken play, but it's play action. But Willie ran this route, and all he had to do was end up open. Okay. Now, of course, he works on routes, but that one route that he ran, he had to have the discipline to run that right. No hype, no nothing. Concentrate on what he was doing. Okay. I remember, I'll use Marshall. I remember Marshall came back to Monday Night Football after his injury. Okay. And after the game, he gained a whole lot of yards, did really good in the game. They put him on the side of the trailer. The trailer at the end, they put you, what is it? At the end of the game, you go on the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go on the side of the trailer or whatever, like you're the player of the game or whatever, right? And I listened close to what he had to say. He said, I knew that when I got back, I couldn't just get in there and start to perform at the level I was at. I had to let the game come to me, you see? So it's the observations that I made. So that when I got to the point, when I finally got to the point where it counted, I was put on the stage, when I finally got in the main stage, with Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor on a Saturday night, okay?
Amazing.
And I was like, you guys got me opening for them? They were like, no. And this is my first time in the main room. I've been waiting 3 years, okay? All right, it's me, Eddie, and Pryor. So I said, well, what position I'm in? They said, Eddie goes on first, you go on in the middle, and Pryor goes last. Then the second show, Pryor goes first, you go in the middle, and Eddie goes last, right? And you know what? I didn't blink an eye. I was like, show me where it's at. Show me when we start. Because it's out of that knowing.
Right.
That knowing that I worked on my part. And all I got to do is play my game. I'd be all right. I turned it out. Standing ovation. I'm standing in one of these little tiny closets in the back, right? They in the green room. They got chicks and jelly plates and shit. And Richard Pryor walks back before that. My mother sent me 20 in the mail, and she told me, "I know you need it, and you better not leave," right? Because I was thinking about leaving Hollywood. And Pryor comes back to that little dressing room I'm in by myself, and he looks me up and down like I'm some kind of strange animal. He shakes his head. He goes, "Man, you's a funny mother." And I was like, there, I did it. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
And not just me, but you know, I'm too. You know, my managers, they'll tell me something, or another comedian tell me something. I'm absorbent of that. You know, and I watch the versatility. In athletes and the versatility in comedians and actors, and I relate them together. And I see the difference, you know? So
Right.
That's what helps me.
Tommy, do you have that set?
Do I what now?
Do you still have that set? I'd love to hear that.
No, because, you know, cell phones, they you know, they
Right.
No, just the big ones, you know, the big military ones, the big trips, you know?
Right. So no one recorded it, huh?
No one recorded it.
They probably have it on beta or something like
that. Yeah.
Right.
But you know, there's nothing to compare to muscle memory, which comes from practice and comes from rehearsal, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
And that muscle memory is there,
Yeah.
you know, and that like I say, I relate that to both athletics, acting, and comedy. Now, I don't know about anybody else. You know, I do know that's what helped me.
Well,
you know, and then when it comes to competition, go ahead.
That's what helps all of us. I mean, Marshall has run that 24 dive or whatever it's called, you know, 20 times in his mind and 20 times or 100 times in real life that week. I mean, I've run the pass pattern 1,000 times. Marshall's run it 1,000 times. So It's all muscle memory. And when you get in the game, you're not thinking about the fans. You're not thinking about anything. You're thinking about the play and execution. I really, you don't realize they're there really until the play is over, until you've scored, and then you're like, okay, great. But when it's going because you're so focused, and you have to be, because look, we play with big boys, and they will hurt you if you're not focused. So you have to be focused. You got to know where the linebacker is, where the defensive tackle is, where's the strong safety, where's the free safety, where's the cornerback. I mean, those guys are, in our day, they were trying to tear your head off. So you had to be focused on where you were, what you were doing, and your execution. If they're playing zone, you know you better sit down. If they're playing man, then you can go. So you have to be really concentrating on what you're doing. You don't have time to really think about other things, but what you're doing.
It's awesome. And
yeah,
how about
it's interesting. Hold on, one thing. And it's interesting, you know, how you'll see the big play. You know, like for us, it'll be the big joke. You know,
exactly.
Like, you know, I'll wait, and then it'll be the punchline there.
Right.
You know, and the big play there. I relate the two of them. You know, you may think I'm going to do one thing, but I have something else planned. But I have to hold that to myself until the snap goes. You know, it's kind of like the same science.
And what was the rehearsal schedule like for you? Like in terms of your routine or your discipline of doing that to get you ready?
We rehearsed all day, every day, 5 days a week for In Living Color. Our script was like a phone book compared to other people's scripts. Like that could have been the best situation I was ever in, because we not only did we have to do, you know, sketch comedy, but we did commercials and all that, and we shot all day. And then we would shoot on Friday. So it was a regiment. It was tough for us because we worked, but the payoff at the end of the day wasn't just the success of the show. It was the success of all of our careers, because we moved into other facets of our career with a more broad skill set.
Yeah, brilliant.
Hey, Tommy, I've always wanted to ask you this. Where do you feel you learned the most? Like where was your most growth? You know, do you think the comedy, where did you see like the most growth in your career, your profession, and what you did?
The most growth that and the most important growth for me was to be able to, one, postpone gratification, you know, to be able to have the ability to sit with my manager or by myself and go over stuff in my act, or go over a script, or go over that stuff when no one was around. It was really, really hard for me because I got PTSD. I got whatever. Put some letters together. I got all of it, you know. But it was, yeah, you know. But it was just when no one was around, the work was up to me, you know. And I improved at that. You know what I mean? I improved at that, and it became a way of life, you know. And I thank my manager for that, and I thank a lot of people around me for that. Kenny G, believe it or not, Kenny G was one of the people that taught me a lesson in discipline. The saxophone player. I was on tour with him, and he would do a sound check for 2 hours before his show. Then when the rest of the band went to change their clothes and go have a drink or whatever, he'd go into the bathroom and rehearse another hour by himself. And then you wonder why he's one of the top saxophone players and sold as many records as he did. You know what I mean? And it's watching and once again, I had to see examples of discipline too. I had to see the results of discipline in the smaller things that I would see, you know. So I would watch, and it's that observation of, and another thing was the ego. You know, in my business, you know, you can get caught up in, hey, I should be doing this, or I'm as good as that person, or I'm as good as that person, or I'm as good as that person. You know, and I need, you know, one of the things that I learned that was really, really key for me was to stop freaking saying that to my damn self. You know, if I want to do something that I see someone else doing, find out what they're doing and learn how to master it.
Yeah.
You know, because I can sit around with that, and that would take away one of the most precious things that I have, time.
Yeah.
If I utilize my time, learning things that I want to do, eventually I'll get to do them. But it ain't gonna be me going, oh man, I should. You know, there's a cornerback in the league named Everson Walls. Okay, and Everson Walls is one of my favorite players based on what he's been able to do with his career. You know,
yeah.
And Everson Walls hasn't gone to the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? But when you talk to him, he don't care. He knows what he's done. And he knows it's not up to him to put him on that pedestal. But he knows the type of player he was. He knows what he was able to learn. He knows how he transcended. He knows he was cut by the Cowboys and then ended up on the front of the Sports Illustrated with the Giants when they won it. He knows. And those are the kind of things that are important to me.
Yeah, that's cool.
And Tommy, what was your history with drugs? You know, we talked to Willie and Marshall earlier about this, and they stayed on the straight path. You know, I OD'd in my early 20s, so I picked a different path. How about for you?
Mm-hmm. Okay, this thing is over now. I gotta go. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we can't hear you. What did you say? We can't hear you. You're breaking up. You're breaking up, Tommy. You're breaking up.
Yeah, hold on. I'm at the grocery store. I just gotta go inside and get some eggs. Well, for me, it came down to life or death. You know.
Yeah.
And drugs haven't been a part of me as a person. They've been a part of my life for years because of where I grew up, you know, and my relationships with drugs and substance really started out with me with peer pressure. You know, I never thought that it was cool to smoke weed. I never thought that it was cool to drink because I saw how people acted. Like I said, I wanted to be an entertainer as a kid, and I wanted to be an athlete too, you know, and I always watched what people were doing. But as I got older, I got kind of clicked out. People weren't hanging out with me. You know, one of my main issues that I always had was that issue where I didn't fit in. You know, being black in a white being white in a black family. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you've been black in a white family.
yeah, both of them, yeah. But it's that sense of isolation. I never considered what I was doing. I was just trying to fit in, but I never knew what effect that would have on me. I never knew it. So, you know, when I turned 15 and everybody was smoking weed, I tried to start smoking weed, even though I didn't want to. I started drinking, even though I didn't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even then, when I got 19, I stopped everything, because I knew I wasn't going to get ahead. I knew it unless I stopped. Okay? But the story took a turn. When I got successful and I became the huge star that I am, I'd like to say a huge star, you know, but, you know, I want to say it in context of, you know, of humility, you know, as far as others see. I'm still Tommy, you know. What with the personal things I started going through, the isolation that I felt from the divorce or personal things that I was going through, it drew me back to the things I used to do. And I was not prepared for the effect that it had on me. So I started dabbling here, dabbling there, you know, and next thing you know, it was out of control. Next thing you know, I was almost losing my life, you know, and thank God I had good people around me, you know, and an amazing creator who made sure that I got with exactly the people who have that problem, who do what I do, and said, you're going to be okay. You know, I went through the OD. I went through all the extremes that you can go through, you know, and you would think, oh man, oh, that's so embarrassing or whatever. And for years I thought that, but I don't think that now, because now I can be a beacon for someone who may be lost in that way. And the one thing that got me back on the path was to realize that I deserve this. I deserve a good life. I'm gonna go back to football. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna go back to football for a second, because I observed, you know, I love that sport. There was, you know, the Broncos were advancing to the Super Bowl. Okay, this kicker had missed 2 field goals so far. Okay, this one was to win it. Okay, this one was to win it. They weren't supposed to win it. Terrell Davis came in from Georgia. You know, they really put a good team together. Shanahan, you know the story. So the kicker went on the field to go kick the field goal, and he was nervous because he had missed 2, and this is the one to win it. Now, Ahmad Rashad told me, y'all think it's funny when a kicker misses something, we think we're going to kill your ass. Okay? It's a whole different thing, he told me, right? So all that's weighing on this kicker's mind, right? Right? All these people that have been breaking their legs and all this stuff the whole season, it rides on me, and all I have to do is kick, right? Shanahan sends him halfway out on the field, right? He goes, okay, let's go do this thing, man, right? And then he calls him when he's right in the middle of the field. He says, come here for a second. And the kicker runs back. He says, hey, man, you deserve this, man. You deserve this too, man. And he nailed it. You know, it's those kind of things. I deserve it. I deserve a good life. That's the thing that that brought me back to balance. I had a business manager. She was sitting across from me. She was doing my will. She was closing off all of my accounts, and she was crying, man. And she said something to me that helped me. She said, I gotta do these things because legally I represent you, and this is where your life is going if you can't stop. And she said, the thing that hurts me the most about this is that you have a good life and you can't enjoy it.
Wow.
Oh.
So seeing Shanahan say, you deserve this. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just you know, just all the experiences that I had with, and even with friends looking me straight in the face. Look at me straight in the face. Ozzie Smith. Ozzie Smith, a very little known shortstop.
Yeah.
Ozzie Smith, I was in St. Louis, and this is what real friends are. He called me. I was doing comedy in town, you know. He called me. He said, you little son of a bitch, meet me in the lobby. Okay? And Ozzie ain't never talked to me like that. Ozzie put me in that car, man. Ozzie took me on the highway for 2 hours. Ozzie cussed my ass out some kind of vicious, boy. And then he dropped me off at the hotel. And then he smiled. He said, you know what to do. And rode away.
Great.
That's what I'm talking about.
Wow. Amazing. So, you know, we're kind of winding down here. That was pretty awesome, Tommy. Thank you. We're winding down here. So just a question for all three of you as we kind of wrap up here. So, what was for each of you? I mean, how did you stay on your truth as you elevated and so many people got to know you and you became famous in the world? How did you stay on your truth when you had so many other opinions coming at you of maybe what to do or how to do something? How did you stay truthful to yourselves?
Well, I'll start. For me, it was the basics of making sure that the people who really knew me were always around me,
Mm-hmm.
and not the people who knew what I had became. Because, you know, before I became Marshall Faulk, the football player, the person that I was, that's the authentic person that's inside of me. That's the person that when I'm with my mom, when I'm with my siblings, you know, that's who I am. Now, when you walk down the street or you're in a crowd of people, or when people are chanting your name, that persona that you put on, that's a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we get lost and we have an identity crisis as to who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom did a great job at always, she kept me in check with little things. I bought my mom a house and I took care of my mother. And when I went home, I'm talking about, I'm 24, 25 years old. My mom would tell me, if you're going to stay here, now I paid for the house. If you're going to stay here, I need you to stop by 12 o'clock because that's when I go to sleep.
That's right.
I got a curfew in the house I paid for. Now, when I was a kid, I had a curfew. Now I'm a grown ass man, and and I pay for the house, you know, or the little things. My mom would send me to the grocery store, you know, just cause,
That's right.
just to like humble me, to let me know that I was still her son, regardless of how much money I had or how many fans I had. And it kept me reminded as to like, I'm not above anything in life at any point in time. Nothing is beneath me.
Wow.
Right. Wow. I mean, that's awesome. And it's sort of the same for me. I mean, my mom and dad were just two amazing people. And I always wanted to make them proud, basically, and I always wanted to make sure I did nothing to embarrass them. And my sister was one of the driving forces also. My sister was actually faster than I was growing up.
No way.
Oh my God.
Really?
Marshall, she played in a power football game with the girls. She scored 6 touchdowns and over 450 yards.
Oh
I mean,
God.
it was crazy. This girl was so fast. So I wanted to make them proud. And so what I try to do is be consistent in my life. I think I'm the same person I was when I was growing up, when I was in college, when I was high school, pros. I try to be the same person. I never see a person that I look down to or overly look up to. I mean, I treat everyone with dignity and respect. I think if you can get that, if you can show that, then you can receive that. And that's what I try to do, because I try to see the good in everyone. But yet also I know that I have to give that out too. When I go in the elevator sometimes, and this is my last thought, you know, we have black-white relations from the standpoint, you know, it is what it is. So I'm in an elevator sometimes by myself, and a white lady will walk in with a purse, and she stands in the corner. And what I'll do is start a conversation. I go, "How are you today? Have a nice day. My name is Willie. I'm from California." And then she relaxes. So I think what happens is when you give out something positive, you get back something positive. And that's who I am. I'm a positive person. I see the glass as being half full, never half empty. And I refuse to let other people control the way I think and the way I want to be, because I'm in control of my own destiny. Because at the end of the day, when I look back at my life, I realize that I know nothing. This world is so vast and big, and we think we know a lot, but we know nothing when you think about it. There's people I'll never meet around this world. There's places I'll never see around this world. If I live to be 100 years old, nothing, because it's so much. And the more I think I know, the more I realize I know nothing.
That's awesome, dude. How about you, Tommy?
I'm just mostly gratitude. Mostly gratitude is what keeps me centered and keeps me going. You know, grateful for the people that I've come across in my life, these two gentlemen and a million others, you know. Grateful for my mom, who taught me one of my first lessons in race. You know, I used to be late. You know, me and my sister would be late to high school. And when you're late, you have to go down to the principal's office and sign up for detention. So they would only send me down to the office to sign up for detention, not my sister. My sister looked like Cindy Brady, blonde. You would never know we twins, we the same age, you know? And so my mother, she liked doing stuff like this. She came down to the principal's office, called me and her sister in, and she got in that principal's face. She said, "What in the is the reason why my son is going to detention and my daughter is going to class?" And they were all embarrassed. "Well, we didn't know that was your daughter, and we didn't know that was your son, and the situation." And she said that shouldn't make a difference, you know.
Right.
But she put me in her car that day. She said, "You are not going to class today. You're coming with me." She took me to a picnic bench in the park, and she looked at me, boy. She said, "I want you to know this, and I want you to realize this." She said, "If you want to be successful, you have to accept the fact that your sister can be late, but you can't. you have to be on time in this society in order for you to be successful. And I remember, man, I felt like crying, you know. And she said, that's just, you gonna have to, that's just the way it is, you know. And it's being fortunate enough to have the truth set in front of me, you know, set in front of me at the right times, that I can use that to live a life of purpose. I can use that to live a life of purpose. And so far, so good. And who's counting? You know, I'm the luckiest man in the world, you know, based on my experiences and based on my relationships. Not based on the success and all those, because those go up and down like the daggone gas tank. Because as soon as I look up, the damn thing almost gonna empty again. You know, no matter how nice the car is, I want to kick a hole in the door. What the hell's going on here? You know.
That's awesome.
So just to be able to, just to be able to know that you know, that I do my best, and that pays off. But to do for others always does.
That's so great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So final minutes, guys. We like to turn the tables at the end of the call. Marshall and I have been hosting this series for a couple of weeks. So you guys know Marshall, you guys don't know me, but if there's two questions, a question you want to ask Marshall, even though you know him, that you've always you wanted to know an answer to, feel free to ask it. And if there's anything you'd like to ask me, turn the tables and just ask me a question so we can all share.
Okay. You want to go, Willie?
You go ahead, Tom.
Okay. Ted, you know, what inspired you to want to do this? You know, I always have a curiosity about people who actually take their time, and that's their time, their own time, to try to do something good for others, because in percentage wise, you don't get that outside the door. It seems to be that in the minority. So what are your reasons?
For me, or for Marshall? For me. So
for you, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, you know, I was listening to you guys talk about, you know, childhood and things like that and relationship with parents. Today, I have a great relationship with my parents. But as a young kid at a young age, you know, when my parents got divorced and I was 6, you know, the things I heard from them, what I heard was, you know, we don't love you. And so at a young age, I started to have some messed up experiences. I had some messed up sexual experiences at like 9 years old. And I just got messed up. I you know, one of my heroes as a kid was Eddie Murphy, which is why I do a one-man play today. And I do it on my life story, and I do it on my overdose, and I do it on the truth of my life. But I didn't go that path at a young age. I was just, I had, you know, problems, you know, not like a lot of people in the world, but I had some, you know, messed up problems. And so when I was 21 years old, I got into the insurance business because I didn't have a better plan. You know, my dad went bankrupt. I wanted to go in business with him because I always wanted his approval. And so 21, I get into the insurance business because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I figured, you know, chase money. If you chase money, you'll be happy. You'll get approval. Because I was surrounded by people growing up who had a lot of money. And I was always a little bit envious of that. And so 21 years old, you know, I went in the insurance business. I cracked 6 figures at 22, and I OD'd that night. You know, I was on the kitchen floor. My overdose from, you know, a bag of cocaine, a couple pills of ecstasy. I had 15 drinks of alcohol in me. And my brother finds me on the floor, and my soul is coming out of my head. And I'm leaving, and I'm holding on to my body, you know? And it's kind of an interesting thing where some people will say, well, you have your last thought of, oh, I just want to stay here and I'll be better. I just felt shame, man. I was like, if my family knows that, you know, I'm ODing or I die, how embarrassing this experience is, you know? What a waste, right? And so, you know, I snapped out of that. And then I continued to chase it. You know, I became one of the top partners for this life insurance company at 28 years old. And I had that burning question, like, is this really all there is to my life? And it was just gnawing at me because whatever I experienced, I never felt good enough. I never felt happy, never. And so I left at 28, and that's when I went on the journey of finding my truth and starting to tell my story. And I started to realize as I shared things as a kid, and I shared the truth, like the God's honest truth, people would come up to me and they would tell me things that they'd never told anybody in their whole life. And I would see a weight just drop off their shoulders. And then I realized, man, you know, my real purpose is, you know, I love to perform. So I called my play Good Enough, because I never felt good enough. And I started doing this play about 8 years ago in my life. And it's a 70-minute play. And because I had a built-in stage as a speaker, I started doing it on my stages, and then I started doing it in theaters. And, you know, and the story is really about the truth, you know, helping people see the truth of their life and find their purpose. And that's why I'm doing this, because any message I can send that has to do with truth is what I want to get out to the world. So my original brand was Message to Millions, and now it's Good Enough. We're turning this into a film as well. And I'm doing Drug Free World because I figure, man, if I can just help one person, you know, with the information and just change the trajectory of their life, like what a great purpose to have on this planet. So that's why I'm here.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
My question is for Marshall. Marshall, what did you feel like at the moment when you realized that you were going to retire from the NFL? How did that make you feel?
Well, because I had a plan, I was prepared. But because, you know, football was all I really had done, the sense of scarcity as to what the real world was like, you know, it affects you. And the problems really didn't occur until football season started and you weren't a part of it.
Right. You
know, it was like, wow, this is different.
Wow.
And you know, I'm glad that I was always a person who seeked out, you know, I was okay with asking other people for help, and I was okay with telling people what was wrong and what I didn't know. And that's how I always advanced. That's how I always learned. You know, I wasn't trying to figure it out on my own. I wasn't, you know, that wasn't me. Like I'd literally say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Teach me what you're talking about. And that probably, not probably, without a doubt, being able to make phone calls, going through, maybe I should say not having to go through the depression what most of us go through, you know, with leaving the game. Like I already sensed watching the game go on, not being a part of it. I was like, this is weird. Why am I having these thoughts? Hey, you know, I started making calls like, is this normal?
Right.
And guys was like, oh yeah, dude, listen, you just got to go find somebody to talk to. They'll talk you through it. I was like, all right, cool. And I went, sat down. I got counseling. Somebody talked me through it. They navigated the waters for me on how to find a new purpose with the things that I was doing in life. Because, I mean, from the age of like 5 or 6,
yeah,
football was a part of my life. And then all of a sudden, fall comes in and I'm not playing.
Huh.
I'm not a part of a team, you know, it's weird. So adjusting to that part of life, you can't navigate that by yourself. And being an elite athlete, you got to know that. Right. Because what do? We figure it out. That's what we do. I'm gonna figure this out. Like I got it. And I'm just glad that I had the resolve and the smarts, you know, and the understanding that, and I've always been able to ask for help. You know, I've always been okay with that. You know, I'm not too good to ask for help. I'm not too big to ask for help. Like I want help. If I don't know, I'm gonna seek out help to know. I'm not going to pretend like I know. You know, that's the idiot. He who pretends to know, you know, he's in the he remains the unknown the longest. Like, I'm gonna let you know if I don't know. Like, I'm that dude, you know, people be like, oh yeah, you know what I'm saying. I'm like, dog, like
Yeah, I don't know what you're saying. Yeah.
What are you saying?
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? No, I don't.
I'm that dude.
That's awesome.
Like, I'm literally that dude. When you know your boys always say, hey, you know what I'm saying? No, I don't know what you're saying.
No.
Or, you know, hey, you know your boy. No, I don't know your boy. I don't know your boy.
Yeah.
Don't play those games because I'm serious. I want to know. And that serious, Willie. And it'll get a little serious, you know. A year after I retired, Junior said I retired.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Junior was my neighbor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Junior and I,
buddy.
We hung out.
Yeah.
I literally never knew anything was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I mean, there's just parts of me that, you know, just the assumption of that guys are okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't even assume. I don't care how good you are. When you're getting out of the game, when I know guys are retired, I'm like, hey, bro, check this out. You're going to feel something. It's going to be weird. You might not be able to talk to your wife. You might not be able to talk to anybody. Here's the reality. You got to find somebody to talk to. You can't go through it alone. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care it's going to be different. I don't care if you love the game or you hate the game or you play the game for money. I don't care how much success you have. When you walk away from the locker room, all the things, you don't even know what the game brought to you. You don't even understand but you walk away from it and it's gone. It's just gone. And there's no replacement for it. You have to fill that void or answer what it is. And you can't do it by yourself. You can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Oh.
And promise, final question for Willie, because I'm just curious, what was it like for you?
It was a little different because when I retired, I went right into acting because I knew that's what I wanted to do. So what I did, I made a conscious effort to try not to watch football that year, an entire game. I mean, I watched bits and pieces in the news and everything else, but I didn't sit down and watch an entire game because I knew I would have been depressed. I would have been like, oh my gosh, I want to be there. Because like Marshall said, I played a game for, 12, 30, almost 20 years. Then all of a sudden it's taken away. But I was very fortunate because I was on a TV series recurring for 3 years after that, and then another 3 years. So I went right into something else that kept my mind occupied. I think you have to have your mind occupied with something that you love or something you like, because if not, then your mind will go back to, why am I not there? Or I should be there, or I can do this. I still can do it. Maybe I should come back. And that's the danger you get into, because if you're not doing something that's focusing on something else, then your mind will go back and say, because all the doubts come in about, did I make a mistake? Or maybe I can try again, and all those things. But if you're doing something else, then you can't do that.
Yeah. And are you still acting, Willie?
I do very little. I do some. I did a show a couple months ago, a new show called Family Reunion. But mostly I'm in business now. I do just different things business-wise, and I love what I'm doing and having fun.
Well, you guys are awesome.
Come on,
so, yeah.
Hold on, I got one more question.
Go for it, man.
I got one more question for Marshall. Marshall, so, you went to San Diego, then went to Indianapolis, were successful. All of a sudden, you're thrust to another franchise, and my observation was that as a player, when I saw you play that year, it seemed like that you had made a decision that you weren't going to be limited as to what you could do. You know, and I know that they had the greatest show on turf and all this stuff going on and all this stuff, but outside of that, what I noticed you brought to the offense was you brought a versatility that I had never seen. You know, you would catch, you'd run go routes all the way, bombs. You know, and those innovations that you brought to the game. What was it in your head when you got to the Rams, where you said, you know what, with this opportunity, it's important to me to be the best at everything I can do?
I literally, it was maturity. I went from being a part of a team when I was in Indianapolis to being a leader on a team. And I had when I was in Indianapolis, I had an amazing work ethic, and everything that I did to get myself ready for games, to prepare to go out and to make sure it all was self-serving. Like, I made sure I was prepared. I made sure that I was ready. And when I got to the Rams, Coach Vermeil, he kind of stretched my vision in a sense and grew me as a player, because he then asked me, he asked more of me to start to do more, to be more responsible, to get everybody else ready and to make people around me better. And so it wasn't just about my preparation. I had to then start to incorporate and let them know what was going on in my head and how I prepared and what I did. You know, I literally, you know, I had to start sharing stuff. I show up at 6 a.m., watch film, work out, leave the building, and then show up when everybody else showed up.
Okay.
So, you know, just leading isn't enough. You know, you got to like take someone's hand and show them and grow them. And then that's real leadership. So you start, you watch some more. I got drafted when I was 20. So, and when I got to St. Louis, like you saw, like, that was like me as my infant stages of being a man. You know, I had my family life together. I had everything together. I was a kid, man. I was a kid who was a millionaire, who was like just happy to be in the NFL in Indianapolis. And then, you know, my career had purpose when I was in St. Louis. So you saw a person playing with purpose. I knew what I wanted out of the NFL. I realized that it was a business, and what I wanted to get out of it, I knew exactly what I wanted. I had a plan. And that's what you saw.
Awesome.
That's awesome, man. Well, I want to thank all you guys for being here. For our audience that's watching, we have some links down below. Yeah, thanks guys for coming. Appreciate your time. We have some links down below for if you guys want to tune into the show. You guys can enter your email, and we'll email you the different shows that we do in the upcoming weeks. Awesome. We have some links down below also for Drug Free World. And the cool thing about this charity is that, you know, Marshall and I raised about $20,000 a couple weeks ago. In the last couple of years for causes like this, Drug Free World and other causes, raised about approximately $1 million. And down below, the money that we raise goes towards certain educator kits and booklets that we just give for free. So people don't have to pay for them. So if somebody wants to get involved in their community where you feel like you want to spread the message and educate people, there's kits where you can go into school systems, you can go into groups, you can educate people on the truth about drugs. There's also booklets that you can pass out to inform people. And, you know, the one thing that I've learned from this is never doubt that a single piece of information or one person's influence could change somebody's entire life. Yes. I think sometimes we forget that that we can make a difference. And there's such a problem here in the world that, you know, it's people like us and people like you watching that can really make a difference and change the tide a little bit. So I want to thank you guys for showing up. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Willie. Marshall. Thank you. Again.
Appreciate
it. And those of you guys watching, get involved down below, okay?
And Marshall, can't wait to see you on the golf course again, buddy. Love you, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, Tommy. Love you, miss you too,
got it,
brother.
man. You guys be safe, man.
Always, Marshall.
All right.
Sure. Love you, T. Love you, Tommy.
Take care, guys.
You too, brother.
All right.
Stay well, guys.
All right.
All right.